One of the biggest gaming news stories of 2025 has been the banning of several games from storefronts for issues of their content, and it's not just been adult games. Vile Exhumed is a horror investigation thriller made by Final Girl Games and published by Dread XP. It is a director's cut re-release of the game Vile, which the developer Cadaver put out in 2024 on itch.io. It has you accessing the hard drive of a disturbed individual, uncovering old secrets about its owner and the people within their orbit. The game had a Steam page, gathered over 3,000 wishlists, and was set to be released on July 22nd, 2025. On July 21st, however, they had to announce a delay, as Valve had yet to actually approve the game on Steam, but they were clearly still hopeful for a release. You'll know as soon as we do. We'll pick the first date we can after approval to get Vile launched. However, 1 week later, Cadaver announced that Vile Exhumed had been fully removed and banned from sale on Steam. All those wish lists gone, and the potential exposure of being on the largest PC storefront was completely wiped away. Steam's official reasoning for the ban was for sexual content with depictions of real people, but the developer replied, "There are a lot of intense visuals in Vile Exhumed, but there is no uncensored nudity, no depictions of sex acts, and no pornography whatsoever." Steam and itch.io as well have been the subject to a targeted attack throughout 2025 by a group of evangelical Puritans using pressure tactics on payment processors to ban and censor erotic games and game content. So you could see this as Steam being overly cautious and an independent developer getting caught in the crossfire, though Steam has also had a history of being difficult by themselves. Final Girl Games and Dread XP didn't take this lying down, however. After being banned from Steam, they released the game themselves as shareware under a Creative Commons license, free for you to download from the URL vileisbanned.com. You have the option of making a donation to the developers too, where 50% of the profits will be donated to Red Door Family Shelter. It's a wonderful positive spin on a bad situation, and I encourage the donation, both for charity and because this was the developer's first commercial venture, and they deserve the support. I also recommend you to play this game. It is quite short, it recommends playing in a single sitting and doesn't save your progress, which is fine, you could hit the credits within an hour. But it tackles heavy subject matter that a lot of games shy away from or mishandle disastrously. It has stuck with me. I think it deserves to be talked about, and it's a shame it was denied a larger audience. I only regret that it took me so long to get this video done. This is an intense and personal work by the developer Cadaver, dealing with extremely heavy themes of sexual assault, misogyny, and male entitlement. My own views and experiences might leave my own interpretation of the game wanting in the eyes of others. So if the game interests you, I once again encourage you to experience it for yourself and form your own ideas and interpretations. In this video, I'll be going into every facet of the game, including a lot of its secrets, almost like a commentated Let's Play. We will also be getting into the heavy subject matter featured, and I must warn that this is probably the darkest game that I have covered for this channel. I may have to censor some visual elements for YouTube. Again, there's no nudity, but YouTube is more prudish than Steam, but I do not want to censor my discussion around the game and what it covers, so you have been warned. But I also want to highlight how I don't think this game should have been banned from Steam, and I think there's no better way than by showing the game in more or less its entirety. After all, do the book banners really read the material they are trying to censor? As intense as Vile might be sometimes, I think it was wrong for it to be pulled, and doing so does a disservice to developers, to their audience, and to the wider gaming landscape. So, let's take things from the top. Our computer boots up. This software will not track your whereabouts and activity. Good to know. First, we need to put in the computer pin to access it. Any series of numbers will do. The main menu of this operating system will be the bulk of our playtime, and the tiny whirring of the old computer will be the only ambience for us here, though I will be playing music sometimes for this video. The operating system we're dealing with is incredibly basic, like an old Macintosh OS without the icons. We only have a handful of options we can click on here. There's no typing in the search bar to open new passages like in The Root Trees Are Dead or a Sam Barlow game. We can only go to where we click. In the icons, there's a menu, which is the game's menu, a paint program, which fully works, and you can even save your screenshots and find them in the app data folder of your actual computer as well. There's even a working calculator here too, in case you need to do your taxes. You can also take notes and consult them at any time with the control key. You'll probably want to do that, though be careful as that first click on the notepad will select all text, and it's easy to accidentally delete all your notes if you're rushing. There is also a clock here, synced to your actual system time, but don't pay it too much attention watching this. Production on this video has been a nightmare, and so the time displayed is going to be hopping all over the place like we're Billy Pilgrim. Alterations in time and space are not part of this experience, thank you. The other programs here are the more productive paths if you wanted to progress in the game. You can't access all of them straight away. Several of them have passwords and you'll need to sleuth them out, and this will be the dangling carrot to keep you going. The strange password screen here is the equivalent of finding a locked door with a symbol in Resident Evil. Turn around and start exploring. So, let's find out who the person is who owns this computer. The first of these programs is called dlove.exe, so we'll just load that up. To be honest, I'm not sure what else this could have been. If we tried to go in for some dirty love ourselves, we find that our IP address is blocked. Okay, simple roadblock to keep us on track, I guess. Let's look at something else. Cat.doc is a document about cats. 3 different cats called Misa, Jackson, and Gomi. Please keep inappropriate genitalia jokes to yourself. This page is entirely innocent. From here, we have 3 different websites that encapsulate the interests of the user of this computer. Candy is for Candy Corpse, a forum dedicated to an adult movie actress of the same name. VNS is Video Nasty Swap, a community dedicated to trading, selling, and buying horror movies. They have some real ones listed here that are notably public domain, but most are fictional. Some are adult, some are extreme, some are allegedly rare, and some... well, I'm surprised this is in Canadian dollars, because I'm pretty sure this is banned in the province of Alberta. Then there's FFVR, which isn't Final Fantasy Virtual Reality, but a place called Found Footage Video Rental, which is a more official outlet compared to VNS. They have a much more varied selection of films and even some family-friendly titles. I guess it can't be the early internet without some pop-ups, right? Glad these particular annoyances went the way of the dodo. Not that we're free from adverts and scams now. Anyway, I actually decided to click on them. Why not? Am I going to get a virus from the poker game? A Trojan from the free computer? Or from advertising? Or yes, from this pop-up over here. So now, next on our list... Nothing seems to have changed after this. We can just go on, I guess. 2 other avenues here on the menu are open to you. One is an instant messenger, which we'll go into detail with soon, and the last is a website that sells perfumes, and whose listings all lead to error messages. Huh. There are 5 different functions here that are locked behind passwords of some description. The email requires a login for a start. You actually saw that email address when you put in the PIN at the beginning. However, if you even noticed it, you might not remember it now. A program called para.exe is encrypted, with some star symbols above for some reason. And 2 programs called vile.mov and molly.exe are also locked with different passwords. You can get hints for what to look for there, at the very least. Lastly, we have the user system settings, which asks for your PIN. I hope you remember your PIN, because it's whatever you typed at the start. Oh, I got an email. Still can't get into my inbox though. Fortunately, I do remember my PIN, and we can go in and get a few details, such as the user being one Sean Gerais. Don't know if I'm saying that last name right, but good to have a name to attach this machine to. I would also note that this computer appears to be running a quad-core processor. Plus, there is an attached memory card larger than its internal storage, despite all of the things we've been seeing suggesting a very .com kind of world. We can deduce from this that it's sometime after, and this hard drive has been plugged into a more modern machine where we are now uncovering its secrets, which does give us a degree of separation from Sean here. And you might be thankful for that separation when you open the instant messenger to learn more about Sean. It's a bad start seeing his handle is shoot the dog, frankly. One conversation is from a guy called Dennis, last heard from in 1998, who moans that a girl he took home got all bitchy when I went in for the kill. He then wishes Sean was back here with him and alludes to some kind of incident. I bet if you came back to the state for a weekend, nothing would come of it. Bitches like that, after all this time, I bet if you called her up, she'd let you get in her pants. This is one of the first things we learn about Sean, but we shouldn't judge him by the company he keeps. He'll provide enough rope for himself here. Sean says he knows plenty of women and doesn't care about whatever Dennis is referring to. This is probably not true, because the next contact on the list is someone called Username 007, who is not James Bond, but a scam bot. Sean knows it's a scam bot, but his first reply is, "How do I know this isn't fake?" And then goes to get her information anyway at nearly 4 o'clock in the morning. It reads as incredibly desperate. We'll follow up with this a fair bit later. The next two contacts seemingly allude to the aforementioned incident in 1997. The first is a guy called Will, who is a cop, and gives Sean a heads up that his special friend called on him. He seemingly helps Sean delete evidence like messages and sends over the police report and tells him when the police will be coming to him so he can get his story straight. All the while, the both of them trash this unnamed woman and make her out to be crazy, lying, exaggerating, or just wanting attention, though Will has to sneak in that she looked hot in her photos for the police as well. The next is a short exchange with a work colleague called David, where Sean is trying to find out why he was fired. David simply asks him, "Is it true that you did that to that woman?" Sean blows up at him in reply. The more we see Sean talk, the more we see why he fits in so well with his friends here. The messaging is so clear to be undeniable. There's no way to read this and not understand the toxic behavior at play between these men, denigrating several women they've encountered whilst bragging about their own actions, going beyond locker room banter, even going outside the law to defend one another in an echo chamber of reinforced misogyny. It is written very bluntly, but this is a subject that frankly deserves to be approached as such. The final chat is someone called Molly, registered in contacts rather than friends or co-workers, but we can't open it. It's password protected. You might have some ideas about who she might be, but we'll have to come back to solve this password later. Now we know vaguely who the owner of this machine was, let's try and get into Sean's emails. I'm guessing Shoot the Dog is the address. Not sure about the password. The hint says Book of the Head. Ah, I know about that. There was a film called Evil Head in the Video Nasty Swap, clearly a porn parody of Evil Dead, starring this Candy Corpse girl, who read the Book of the Head, the Necronomicon. Checks out. I'm confident on that being the password, but I'm not sure about the email still. Let's look somewhere else, like the Candy Corpse fan site. We can see her tapes here, the earlier mentioned Evil Head, We're All Gonna Die Out Here, which is a parody of the Blair Witch Project. Lastly is R.I.P. Her Head Off, which I don't know if it's a direct parody of anything specific, but the description of it is pretty forward about its contents. There's a forum on this fan site. Remember forums? We can see Sean's user profile here, giving us an email address. Nice. Sean seemed to be somewhat prolific here. He wasn't one for making topics, but loved to comment his own thoughts on other people's threads. The forum is currently locked, but you can still browse some of the posts here. And of note is one of a guy called Nameless Norm, who says he met Candy on the street. I asked to take a photo with her. She said yes, but then changed her mind out of nowhere and walked away. The subject line says what he feels about this experience. He posted a video of the encounter too, but it's since been removed. Other people comment on the video, calling Candy rude for refusing a photo, taking it further and further, to the point I wonder if these people really even liked Candy to begin with. The forum seems to have been locked because of the rising hostility amongst its users, which is probably responsible of the mods. Candy seemingly disappeared, no longer following the schedule that the users here knew she always followed. Perhaps after that video was posted, she felt guilty about her behavior and doesn't want to face anyone. I know that if she apologized, I would be happy to continue supporting her. Let's make sure she knows that we would forgive her if she were to return. I take back my compliments to the mods. This is completely delusional. But hey, I haven't seen the tape. Who knows what Candy said to that guy? Speaking of that video, it was taken down not for breaking any rules, being an invasion of Candy's privacy, or even for prompting the comments from the other users. The video was eating too much bandwidth on the site, which is hosted from his mom's house. Well then. We did at least get Sean's email from here, so we can use that to finally log in. There's quite a few in here, and going through all of them in one go would be exhausting, so let's highlight what's relevant, starting with that Candy video. Sean tries to talk to the person who posted it, apparently believing it wasn't the real Candy. He implicates the mods in a conspiracy for taking it down and asks to see it. He does get a reply, Norm not really caring for the conspiracies, and sends over the video file. Sadly, the video portion is corrupted, so we only get the audio.
Are you Candy Corpse?
Yeah. I don't usually get recognized.
No way. I can't believe I'm meeting you. You're like the coolest. I don't just like your videos, I swear. It's really cool that you come up with the ideas for them all. You really like horror too, right?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think horror and sex go hand in hand, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I love your videos so much. They're so creative. You make some really cool lighting choices too. You're so talented and impressive. So anyways, can I get a picture? I've got this camera actually. It's 2 megapixels, so it's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. The lighting is all my manager, Andy, actually. He's great at that stuff. But yeah, we can get a quick picture if you'd like.
Great. Thank you so much. I have an idea for a fun pose. If you could just take your shirt off for a second.
What did you just say?
Or even just lift it up. It'll be funny. Come on.
Yeah, fuck this. I'm not taking my shirt off, man, and I'm not taking a picture with you anymore either.
Are you kidding me? Are you too good to take one picture? You said yourself no one ever stops you on the street. You're not even famous. You're a stuck-up cunt.
Well, this changes things. The guy from the forum of Gross Sexist Weirdos actually handled the situation like a gross sexist weirdo. Candy actually sounds like she's quite proud of what she does, and is happy when the guy is actually engaging with her and her work on a somewhat creative level. She is the one who comes up with the ideas for them, according to Norm himself here. Candy clearly feels empowered and fulfilled by the videos she makes. Norm ruins all this, as he's someone who only knows her from said work, but thinks that means that he knows her completely, despite being the actress, not the characters she plays as, and so he treats her like the sex objects that he sees her as. Not surprising Candy disappeared after this. How do you process being confronted by that when meeting your fans is so rare for you? Sean sends another email back saying he's certain this isn't Candy. He could be drunk, like his buddy was on Messenger, or he could just be smashing away at his keyboard in foaming rage. Either way, Sean seems unhinged, and he doesn't receive a reply. Norm might be delusional, but he's not at whatever level Sean is operating at. On the subject of parasocial obsessions, another thing we can follow up on here is that Dirty Love website that Sean is IP banned from. He sent an email saying he believes this banning was a mistake, protesting he never even used the site's messenger to talk to any of the girls. But if he did do it, surely that's the purpose of this site, and therefore it'd be fine to message them whatever. But he didn't do it, so that's also fine, and please unban him. His specific and pathetic defense falls away when you go to his deleted emails and find, yes, he wasn't using the messenger in the site, but instead directly emailing the women on there, asking them to play with knives and cover themselves with cuts and gashes. Another example of not respecting the boundaries performers have in order to feel safe, and clearly understanding these borders exist, or else he wouldn't be trying to be sneaky about this with this email subterfuge. That email we got whilst in the system files turned out to be an alert there's new items in the sweet shop. I don't know what the sweet shop is. I'm guessing not an actual shop for confectionery if it's sending email alerts, but okay. Sean has correspondence with a person named Brad, who both unfortunately have similar interests. Brad recommends to Sean a tape he found called Mother's Day, being a potential snuff movie featuring a kid and a mom, and it arouses him. Sean also sent an email to Brad talking about how he is starting to make his own short films with a camcorder he bought on Brad's recommendation. When I tell you you've never seen anything like it before, well, I mean it. I am already planning a sequel. Remember Sean's cop buddy Will sent over the police report ahead of time? You can see the email in the trash, with Will showing off just what makes him a stand-up officer of the law. He tells Sean to hide the files, and that's presumably what Molly's folder is on the desktop. We can't get another copy from this email, so we'll come back to this. Elsewhere, we do have an email from Casey, the manager of found footage video rentals, replying to an inquiry by Sean about videos of Candy Corpse. She politely enthuses about Candy and the movies she makes, or rather made since she stopped, but informs Sean there's no more tapes for him to find. Casey and her boss will keep an eye open if anything new happens to appear though. Exploring that video rental site seems like a good next step, so we'll do that. We can see a photo of Casey here, listed as the assistant manager. Huh, she just said manager in her email. The actual manager is a guy called Andy, who is shy about putting his own photo up, but not his employees, I guess? Here I noticed the top banner of movies is different on the homepage compared to other areas. Most prominently, the central picture swapping to a noisy picture of, I guess, Candy Corpse? Clicking it leads me to a login gate to access the adult section. I don't know the password, but I have my email and birth year from the forum website, so I'll make a request. Just browse some of the other movies around here, until eventually it pops. Sugar water. A good way to attract the insects. We're in the seedy back room now. There's 3 films here. The 4 Day Long Night, which is another Candy Corpse video, apparently rare and the first of hers. You can see what it's about. Then a movie called Chainsaw Pussy 3, which is like the movie Teeth, but with chainsaws. I wonder if I have to see the first 2 to understand the plot. Lastly, 14 Men, 1 Bed. There's only 1 bed. Whatever are 14 burly hairy men on a hunting trip to do? I guess we'd have to watch it to find out. Just as I'm leaving, I get another email from someone called Regular Videos, saying, here's that thing you wanted, and a link for regularvideosforpeople.com. Oh god, I don't like this. I haven't been voicing my own uncomfortable disgust at everything we've been seeing, but this moment genuinely made me freeze up. I know there are dodgy sites out there, but I fear the website that took no care for its visual design, for it was never meant to be seen. Despite the titles at the top there, none of these videos are quite as graphic as you might imagine. They have editing that makes some of them feel almost experimental in nature. But their topics are sort of mostly innocent. Well, Amateur features a woman vomiting blood into a toilet. Feeder is a wasp or something being eaten by ants whilst a woman cries in the background. Breeding is pig noises, mincemeat, and something else that I can't tell through the low resolution. These can be described as unsettling, and maybe they are for regular people, but the bar has been set quite high in this game. By the way, this is what the binary in the email said, in case you were curious. Related to experimental filmmaking, next in my playthrough I went to access vile.mov. This is one of the most important folders on the computer, and also one of the darkest, so please be prepared for that. Password protected, but I worked out what it wanted by going through the emails. Sean's cat Misa was originally called Ginny, and Sean's been using that name as a password. This gets us in, with various files to choose from. The first being an image of a shop, potentially a video rental shop. The next photo is of a woman's torso, naked, gouged, and covered in blood and entrails. We do not know who this person is. There is an email written here by Sean, unclear if it was ever actually sent. I won't be reading all of it out, consisting of violent ravings about the twisted sexual dreams of its author, focusing entirely on Candy Corpse and his obsession to find out who she is and where she went. He switches rapidly between sensual writing that deconstructs her body into parts, fluids, or functions, and angry deranged ranting in full capitals. He professes his love and his hate in manic digital scrawl. But he is also here to talk about his movie, specifically its sequel. He's been casting to get people who look like Candy specifically to feature in his lurid movies, but he isn't satisfied with just people who are imitations of her. He wants her to be in his movie, to do with him that Candy did in her films. It's not VL, it's not EK, it's not CC. 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 The notepad file is on a girl named Eleanor, her routine, her habits, when she is alone or vulnerable, and details about her body and hair for her casting. 2 more photos showing a woman with her throat cut and gore around a drain. And lastly, a video file, vile.mov. The movie
I'm supposed to be meeting somebody here named Eleanor.
Is a lot of quick cut images interspersed with a bloody hand in a bathtub whilst music plays. We're placed within the shoes of our director here. There's a long zoom on an apartment's exterior. A woman lives there, and when she closes the window, the music cuts away, as if she's shut out the fantasies of the one holding the camera. But the next scene shows the fantasies become reality. Once the video is over, we get another email. This is from Casey over at Found Footage Video Rentals, from her personal email, letting Sean know that she has found a copy of R.I.P. Her Head Off, the one with the 30 extra minutes too, and was wondering if Sean would be interested in buying the video directly. Have a good night. And then I think we see Sean's sequel.
Found Footage Video and Rentals. How can I help you? Hello? Hello? Ugh. Listen, if it's another prank call, you've got another thing coming, okay? I can hear you breathing. You think because we sell scary movies and porn, you can call here at night and the girl at the counter will talk to you until you get off? Fuck you. I'm sick of it. You're disgusting. You're all nasty. You know what you are? You wanna fucking hear it? You're vile.
And that was vile. Sort of. Sure, it's the credits, but we're not done. You can get everything you need to get to this point very quickly, to get to the admittedly not unexpected point about what Sean was doing. But I don't think it's meant to be treated as a big twist, but rather the conclusion that everything that came before supports. There's still more on the computer that we haven't done anything with, and some questions still linger around some of the murkier parts of the game. That's why, when the credits finished and I hit quit at the bottom, the first thing I did was load the game back up again. We know who we're dealing with now, and we can perhaps see things a little bit more clearly. Vile, by its nature, is a voyeuristic experience. Not only are Sean's films the product of a deluded and violent stalker, but the player as well is an onlooker, snooping in on this old hard drive, trying to piece together who this person was, what they did, and who they preyed on. In a way, I am aware this video adds another layer onto this, as I create this structure to invite you, the viewer, to look behind the curtain to the darkness underneath. But obviously, there is a distinction between all of us, from watching me, to me doing this, and to what Sean is doing. Metaphorical glass separates us from the events of the game, and there's plenty more to see. Knowing Sean is doing this to make his own movies to fuel his unrequited obsession with Candy Corpse gives context to some of his emails. In his inbox is one message to a girl where he talks about being stood up by her. While standing up this guy might seem like the logical and safe thing to do, he is extremely specific about where he was and how long he was there, and adds the caveat that he didn't order anything, so he's not sure if people at the cafe would recognize him. Why would it matter if anyone recognized him at the cafe? Well, if Sean was making a cover story for anyone investigating the real reason Valerie was a no-show. Remember Sean's deranged note? It's not VL, he said. VL for Valerie? So she was the person we saw in one of the Vile movies? In the email trash folder, we can also see a likely candidate for who EK was in the rant too. A woman named Eleanor got in contact with Sean first, and apparently traded with him on the Video Nasty Swap website previously. Sean is interested and asks what she looks like so they can meet. She replies she is 5'4" with black hair, but also asks Sean for his name. A question Sean ignores in his next email, where he arranges to meet with her in the evening at a cafe, once again, where we might assume Eleanor met her end. Her appearance is important. He emails one of those hot singles in your area scams, different to the one he was sending messages with earlier, and was asking for specific women with dark hair and blue eyes. When emailing another woman, Lana, who wanted to meet Sean to swap movies as well, she said she was a blonde, and Sean didn't even bother to reply to her after this. Candy Corpse had black hair after all, and if he wants his real CC, well, Lana doesn't know how lucky she was. This section might be a little more scattershot than before, as it consists of what I've found and observed in the game through much time and experimentation. And I see no better time than now to follow up on that spambot woman. She sent an email with a big download button at the bottom, and with gleeful abandon, I accepted the attached file on an obviously sketchy email. Dig that funky dial-up audio. This unlocks hot pics. Now there's an exe file named Mary. Mary is an interesting addition. It's a small game within this game that you can play. It's reminiscent of an old point-and-click adventure game, rotating on the spot and drawing new screens for what you can see. It follows someone breaking into an abandoned apartment to impress his friends, armed with a photo camera to document what's inside, and prove that they aren't a chicken, because bad things happened in that house. Every click of the camera gives you a photo to see. But in this old house, there are things that your eyes just can't see. We're taking these photos as proof to our friends that we did go into the house, but maybe we need them as proof of something more than just that. Your friends are also kind of jerks? I hope it's them, at least. You can learn snippets about the house and its sordid history through the narration of who we're playing as. But you're mostly here to perform a ritual in the bathroom, turning out the lights and spinning 3 times, like the old Bloody Mary myth. God, why are they your friends? as Mary.exe. It deletes itself when you exit at the end. You could see something to this, for Sean to be targeted for something that almost promises punishment for his crimes and twisted desires, grisly and supernatural revenge from his victims, or maybe just tortured women in general. Maybe not directly, but possibly on a thematic level at least. However, this game was actually made separately by the developer outside of Vile, and then included with the re-release. So you might instead just think of it as an Easter egg. It's up to you. While we're actually on the topic of downloads, you might get a pop-up whilst browsing around to find out the date that you die. Accepting it, you'll then get an email with another file to download. Death.exe. This one isn't spooky though, or maybe it is if you're really, really gullible. It's one of those old predict when you die things, just without the questionnaire. If there's something else to this, then I don't know. The numbers it spits out are random, notably all after the system date of my PC, and putting in Sean's birthday specifically doesn't do anything special. This we can definitely call an Easter egg. This has been a momentary reprieve from the heavy stuff, but I should warn, we need to go back into it with the locked files still on this computer. Para.exe is what we'll open next. If you recall the stars when clicking it, you'll note that they are the same stars on the video nasty swap for favoriting an item. If you favorite the 3 Candy Corpse tapes, then the password will be revealed to you. Imbalance. This unlocks Para and frees up the documents inside. First being the Sweet Shop, which sent us an email about new stock, right? I don't have words for this. I just feel uncomfortable and kind of ill. More so from knowing that these places do exist on the net. I'm not here to kink shame, but I absolutely fucking will crime shame. Jesus Christ. The second requires another password. A password protected folder inside a password protected folder, so you know this is going to be bad. The password for this one is in the email folder for a storage locker he rents. Or maybe that's just the cover story. Putting the pin in, we get a catalogue of photos detailing Sean stalking someone and killing them, with pretty strong implications of necrophilia, which tracks with the email Sean wrote. This could be Eleanor or Valerie. Lastly, there's hunting photos. Oh boy. Each of these deer pictures will take you to photos of actual dead deer, cut up and dressed as part of a hunt that I am absolutely not showing on YouTube. This is concluded by the last picture being one of Sean's victims, covered in blood and stuffed into a bathtub. This folder got a bit of a reaction out of me. I am not squeamish, but seeing actual dead and dissected animals in the middle of my game was more than I was expecting. I understand we're comparing her to game, hunted, shot, and dressed here, and you could examine and compare this reaction to my almost relief to seeing the final photo is of a woman instead of another dead animal, and ask questions about that. However, one of these is real, the other is an actress with a lot of fake blood. It's provocative, I'll grant you, but mostly I just want to move on. But the fact Sean himself made this is, I don't know the word, but it feels like an art project. A little digital collage? The message is obvious, but he is the one who made this. For himself, too. Did it entertain him? Did he giggle with glee when he came up with the idea of comparing the women he killed with hunted animals? What a sick way to deal with your loneliness. There are still more cryptic things on this main homepage, and we're first going back to the perfume website. It's odd, right? All these perfumes and all lead to different error messages. Well, the error messages themselves contain a code spelled out one letter at a time. Wickedness. Then, if you mouse over one particular love heart in the bottom, you'll find that it's actually a button, and here is where you put in this code. This takes you to the real website, where you can bid on a snuff film of a 19-year-old. I have heard rumours for as long as I've been on the internet about dummy sites that appear normal on the outside but have obfuscated methods to find the dark secrets within. I don't know how real it ever was, but the rumours of their existence both intrigued and haunted me, despite never seeing it myself on the net. We have one more secret, and believe it or not, it's in the calculator. Yes, Sean is so paranoid that he has a dummy calculator that's actually a password-protected folder. I didn't actually know about this until the developer herself put up a guide on GameFAQs for the game, which is incredibly cool of them. This could have been missed. If you put the PIN number you entered at the start of the game into the calculator, you unlock a hidden folder. It contains pictures of a bloodstained mattress and a bloodstained condom. Yeah. You might ask, why take these photos? Why keep them when they are so incriminating that he has to hide them in this esoteric fashion? Well, you could say for the same reason any of us takes a photo. To remember them. He wants to remember these moments because they bring him happiness, and he will build his whole digital house around them to make sure he can relive the memories they invoke. It speaks to his loneliness, but I obviously don't call for sympathy for him when this is what he does with it. However, while this recognises the circumstances around Sean, it doesn't take into consideration what Sean sees himself as, a director. This is all his art. These photos and videos are all his expression. His victims are robbed of humanity and history to serve as props representing his twisted mindset. Even the inanimate things that he photographs or sees from other people, like the website of women's underwear, have been stripped of use or utility in favour of violent gratification. Of course, Sean is trying to replicate Candy Corpse's tapes, reenacting them himself as he can't understand the gap between fiction and reality, and he has been chasing this for a long while. I have saved the most important folder for last, and that's Molly, who you will recall was the woman on the instant messenger that we couldn't access. The hint for the desktop folder is her street, but I don't think I've even seen a hint of where that could be, so let's instead try to access the IM chat. The clue here is the words memory tested. This corresponds to the memory test entry in the user panel, so jot that down and you get access to the messages with Molly the Dolly. The date of these messages is before any of the others, and Molly is threatening Sean to stay away from her or else she will go to the police. She apparently tried to break off all contact with Sean after, "I don't care that we went out a few times before it happened. I don't care that we went out on a date right before you." Sean responds with these insincere non-apologies that feel entirely inappropriate for what's happened, and he begins to try to gaslight her into thinking that he's actually a good person. Despite what he's done and her trying to break all contact with him, his messages are completely insidious. Despite all the leanings towards what happened here, we still don't know for certain what did happen. The words describing what this incident was are deliberately not here, but sometime after exiting the message logs from Molly, there's a new email from Will, who saw that his friend was online after a long time. He once again tries to assuage Sean of his guilt and smears Molly some more as well, before inviting him back to his hometown. We could do a drive-by in the cruiser and see if she still lives over on Hedgeland Street. Hedgeland. Her street. This lets us access all the files that Sean has on Molly. I have to warn again that this contains upsetting material. First is a photo, simply called Used. Next is something called Home Video. It's the point of view of someone wandering around a house at night, reminiscent of what you might find in a slasher film, complete with muffled breathing. It ends when he finds what he wants. Next is a restraining order filed by Molly, labelled domestic violence, and the court date was a month after she last messaged Sean. Sean was to be served while at work, which is probably how the news broke out around him. The next is evidence. Pictures of Molly's mouth, her clothes and a bloody bag, and documented pictures of her injuries on her neck and face. Then there's the last file. My Girl. A video. This is horrifying. We know what happened. We could have made a guess from just the DMs of Sean's idiot friends, but the details matter. The attack against Molly happened somewhere in July, based on when Molly messaged him to leave her alone. Sean wanted to act out his twisted fantasies on a woman he had apparently only dated a few times. He broke into her house while she slept, assaulted and raped her in her home, and then went on to try and frame his actions as affectionate toward her. It was a couple of weeks later that she actually filed that report. I do wonder, maybe even hope, that Molly had help from her friends. The photos of her injuries had to have been taken the following morning, and looked like they'd been taken by someone else. Considering she didn't report this for several weeks, and she herself seemed scared of him, just wanting to cut ties and be rid of him, it's possible she maybe had a net of support who pushed her to take action, but it sadly didn't help. God only knows if Sean's videos were in the file too, alongside the photos, or if he put them in there for his own pleasure. Another collage for his collection, wanting to keep his old files others tell him to delete because he's that sad and lonely, and the only company he has is memories and spam bots. Will also saw what was in there though, but the only thing this power-tripping cop could think to do is insult and objectify her, never second-guessing what he saw, and helped his buddy cover his tracks. Sean may have lost his job because of this and moved town, but relocation isn't justice. It just gave him a permit to continue his fantasies somewhere else no one knew him, somewhere else no one knew a monster had moved in. A very powerful thing this game does is, I think, how difficult it is to get to Molly's story. You have to sift through so much slanderous, slovenly machismo, so many lies before you can eventually get to her story and begin to see the truth of the matter. Needing to put in so much effort just to get Molly's account, the only one that actually has evidence and not bro talk, is just as haunting as her story. How many other women have had their own stories tossed aside, buried, hidden, or actively suppressed by those in power? How many more Mollys are there? The amount we see of Molly makes her easy to sympathize with, but we should remember that she was just the first of Sean's victims. Valerie is presumably the woman featured in Vile.mov. Eleanor is probably someone amidst all these photos. Both of these women still had lives that we barely got to see before Sean erased them for his projects. If Molly hadn't called the police, there's a chance her story would have been swallowed up by Sean as well. There is, however, another woman of interest, Casey Clyde, the assistant manager from Found Footage Video Rental. Casey is important. We don't end on seeing the vile movie that Sean made, but an email sent by Casey. Over the second movie, the person we hear on the phone must be Casey.
Found Footage Video and Rentals, how can I help you?
We can see that she fits Sean's preferred type as well. Practically a dead ringer for Candy Corpse. Candy Corpse, Casey Clyde. Isn't it weird how they have the same initials? In Norm's video encounter with Candy, she says that her lighting was done by Andy, her manager. Andy, who is also the name of the unseen manager at Found Footage Video Rental? Probably not a coincidence either, as there is a deleted email from Sean where he posed as a journalist to Candy's talent agency, down under Adult Talent Management, trying to get information on her, where Andy replied. And it says right at the bottom that found footage video rental is owned by Down Under Talent and Entertainment, removing the adult title to not scare people trying to rent Duckling 2, I guess. Is Casey Clyde actually Candy Corpse, still living with her passions for horror movies, but now distant from their creation following an altercation with her fans? Honestly, even Andy's existence is debatable, and not just a man that Candy has invented and name drops to ward unwanted people off. Candy and Andy? No photo of this guy on the website, but we will for Casey? And comparing the writing between Casey and Andy, it sure seems they have a similar way of speaking. I could be wrong on all this. Maybe they're partners and help each other in their work, collaborate, and have a bit of one another in each of them. But it does make me pause. More importantly, does Sean know about Casey? Sean's obsession with her made him doubt that even the real Candy in the video was Candy, presumably also confused with a performer not being their own character. Has he had her under his nose this whole time without realizing this? The first email Sean had with Casey seems innocuous. He was inquiring with the store about Candy Corpse tapes. He didn't reply to her, didn't pursue her, or so we can see. It's Casey who replies later, although that's how it happened before too, isn't it? With Eleanor just appearing in Sean's inbox to trade some tapes, and now Casey is using her personal email to try and trade as well. But wait, the final movie is Sean calling Casey.
I can hear you breathing.
After Eleanor and Valerie were gone, and it's triggered after Casey emails us. If Sean never chased Casey before, then surely he's calling her after all this. But that would mean that we're playing
Your body.
as Sean. Why has it taken me this long to realize this? Now, there's quite a lot of ambiguous aspects to this ending, and at first, I took it to mean that Casey was alive and had managed to avoid a horrible fate, but that might just have been my own naivety. Ending the story on a threatening phone call makes the final note so ominous that it's impossible to ignore. If we are Sean, it almost reframes all of our trawling as more sinister than it maybe seemed at first. Were we doing this to uncover lost secrets on this drive? Or relive old memories, as Sean loves to do? All that stuff I just said about Casey and Candy and Andy, theorizing and speculating, suddenly makes me feel gross. Like, who was I to go into that? And who says anything I observed was true, or was instead me just making a spiderweb conspiracy for myself to follow? And regardless, making that conclusion has Sean making that same realization, which puts Casey in danger. And now I feel kind of responsible for that? I feel an uncomfortable closeness to Sean where I thought there was distance. Was I not far off at times from any other parasocial stalker? Assuming I know someone I've never met or spoken to based on what I found online, thinking I'm one of the good people because I'm not treating women as badly as others did? Even when I was trying to find out about Molly, I was looking for the street where she lived. If it is the intention, it's one of the smartest and most devastating tricks the game pulls. Just thinking about it makes me feel vile. I suppose this would be why any series of 4 numbers at the start works. Sean knows his PIN number. Though, if you want to point against this theory, he does have to look up a lot of information that you'd think he'd know about himself to get past his passwords. But I have also locked myself out of old accounts from time to time. Maybe this is the kind of staging that just needs to happen for the game to work, like characters in a play needing to be in the same room and never thinking to go elsewhere. Some of this might feel artificial, with the fact that it's many years later and a lot of these websites are still up and running. Far from impossible, you can still find VHS swap events and companies in 2025. But honestly, the frozen nature of these websites and what secrets some of them hold chills me. So much time has passed, but they're still around. Sean is still around. There are still other people like Sean around in the 90s, in the 2000s, and probably even today as well. A friend recently recommended me the movie 8mm. It's a thriller from 1999 about Nicolas Cage investigating an alleged snuff film and the girl featured within. At first it feels like it's going to be a really seedy crime movie like Seven, which it actually shares a writer with. However, a lot of it ends up being quite silly, peaking with Peter Stormare camply monologuing in his brightly lit crime warehouse. At one point, Nicolas Cage is looking for illegal videotapes, and he ends up at some weird underground bazaar where apparently people flog and barter taboo sex tapes. It feels outlandish given the horrific subject material the movie is meant to be working with. Plus, it is a slick Hollywood production with snappy editing and a lot of famous faces, so while it's a pretty enjoyable thriller, better than the 23% it has on Rotten Tomatoes frankly, it doesn't use its darker side to make as much of an impact as it could have. In comparison, Vile, a game that cost a fraction of 8mm, insidiously crawled under my skin for the last few months, and it's little wonder why. It's a frank exploration of material rarely explored in games, one from a perspective that genuinely gives me pause. Several games have taken the fake computer operating system approach, but Vile uses it not just to make you examine what you, the player, are doing in the game, but also capitalizes on the aesthetic to ground its darker side in the name of feeling uncomfortably authentic. Its use of photographs instead of illustrations draw you in and contribute to its snuff aesthetics. Far from a goofy underground bazaar to peddle nefarious material, it uses mundanely realistic ways these things could be made and shared by real people. All of this happening from an operating system is something that hits close to home for its player, who will be playing this on their computer. The worlds in which Vile explores could be behind the game window, simply mouse clicks away, and it contributes to the unease. This is to say nothing of the more intimate look at the mindset of those who'd be inclined to make such material. Any work from the perspective of a serial killer runs the risk of being gross and exploitative, but Vile implies more than it shows, arguably to greater impact. It's aware of the more extreme type of horror films and hovers around the subject, but only uses some of its aesthetics whilst being far less explicit. Perhaps most crucially, the character and dignity of its victims is a key focus throughout. No one is a sack of screaming meat. Everyone was a person, living their life, and it's haunting that such people would cross paths with someone like Sean. It feels like an incredibly personal piece from the developer, Cara Cadaver, who has literally put herself in the game throughout. The game is uncomfortable, but in a good way. In a way that it should. Vile projects a message with serious bite, and it carries its heavy themes because of this. There is a lot in the game that manages to reach out into the real world too, especially the modern day. There's the aesthetic of seedy underground websites and candid crime videos, sure, but the parasocial dynamics are where the game really hits hard. Fan entitlement leading to toxic mindsets and even crimes and assaults on public-facing women is an occurrence so unfortunately common that you watching can probably think of your own examples, and there have been more high-profile ones since I've been making this video. But Vile also asks us to consider the people that you don't see, because it can happen to anyone. It's a scandal when a celebrity is caught acting inappropriately, when someone in a position of power is found to be acting in an unprofessional manner. But there's plenty of people who could be considered relatively invisible, regular people that the media doesn't care about. What happens to the perpetrators who operate away from the light of public scrutiny? What happens to women who have to navigate a world where men could be collaborators without even saying a word to one another beforehand? Even spaces that women can find comfort in, like Candy making her movies or Eleanor trading these tapes, can be ruined by men coming in and destroying the barrier between fantasy and reality. either through casual forms of sexism or more overt misogyny. I'm not saying this is something I've never considered before, or that a video game taught me about this. I appreciate Vile for using the interactive medium to take a human look at the toxic minds and acts that happen in our world. Whether it's the private misogynistic bro talk that shows a lack of empathy to an entire half of the world's population, or even the monstrous actions of those too far gone to ever be reasoned with. Vile doesn't shy away from the consequences by giving anyone an easy way out of this. Do not look away from its horrors, because the fantasy for some can be reality for others. Even if someone isn't Sean exactly, there are those who are like him, share his fantasies, share his hatred, and isn't that a terrifying thought? Despite leaving me feeling gross, I really like this game. It has a small budget and yet left a larger mark on me than much bigger titles this year. It's the kind of remarkable work with a unique presentation in the gaming sphere that makes me want to hear more from the developer, and more voices besides that wish to explore more material like this in an intelligent way. Unfortunately, Steam's banning of Vile puts a damper on any hope I could have of that. For basically all the reasons I like Vile, I think it was wrong of Steam to ban Vile. It might have seemed like a lot in this video, but I'd like to remind you Steam's reasoning for the ban was sexual content with depictions of real people. No mention of violence in there, which I'd say is worse than its sexual content, kind of a flimsy term frankly. Almost like Steam's accusing the game of being pornography, which I hope you can all see that it most certainly is not. Vile does censor all its nudity and contains no depictions of sex acts, just as the developer said, and again, arguably, its most harrowing parts are what it implies rather than explicitly shows. Vile isn't mild, but at the same time, I don't think it's all that extreme, especially when compared to other media. I have films on my shelf that are more explicit, and yet the BBFC gave them a thumbs up for me to buy them from my local shops and enjoy them on my own terms. That's not even going into books, where retailers big and small will carry almost anything. Obviously, the scandal in 2025 of groups trying to get payment processors to pressure storefronts to remove material they find objectionable sucks. This is well-worn ground at this point, and I won't be retreading it. Payment processors shouldn't be the morality police, and stepping in on purchases of legal material by consenting adults. However, Steam shouldn't get a free pass on this, because they've been just as guilty of being difficult before this fiasco, and I have a list of games to prove it. Horses is the big example. The game received a lot of headlines before its launch in December 2025 for being refused sale on Steam. The game is about working on a farm with horses, but the horses are actually enslaved naked humans in horse masks. While December is after the payment processor scandal, the developer said originally it was asked to upload an early build of the game before they could have their store page activated, over 2 years before it eventually released. They cobbled together an early build of the game, and in that version, there was a scene where a child rode around on the shoulders of one of the horses, while the protagonist guided them around. The scene was non-sexual, but Steam gave a vague response about not wanting grey area content regarding minors on their storefront. I agree the scene of a child riding the shoulders of a naked adult would have been provocative and uncomfortable to say the least, but the debate about its appropriateness is meaningless, because the scene isn't in the game. It was changed in development to be a full-grown adult to allow better discussion of the game's themes. Look, you can see for yourself right here. Steam's initial judgment was in June 2023, and 2.5 years later, the company continues to stonewall the developer despite the scene in question being changed. That seems weird to me. Imagine if a movie was banned for a deleted scene, or one that was written but never filmed. Art is iterative, and sometimes racy, edgy, or just bad ideas get brought up and then cut as part of the process. The result is what matters, and provided no one was hurt or exploited when making it, it's absurd to censor anything for content it does not have. Yet, this is the stance Steam has taken. There's also the matter of requesting an early build to open a store page for the game, which is not standard practice for Steam. This may have been tied to concerns over the live action footage featured, but didn't end up being a factor in the final decision. Perhaps they were concerned about real nudity being in horses as well. But importantly, I think requesting a version of a game that isn't done and making a final unappealable judgment mid-creation is just unfair and cruel. Still, Steam has a duty to make sure there's no grey area material on the store, right? And there's definitely no grey area material anywhere on Steam. Is there? Horse's reasoning is quite particular, but illustrates Steam's opaque and arbitrary judgments. But there is another game Steam banned before the payment processor scandal I'd like to bring up. It is quite different to both Horses and Vile, but I think it's worth highlighting. So let's talk about Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. I'm not liable for the tonal whiplash you're about to experience. Originally made in the 90s for PC and the 3DO, and is sincerely one of the worst games ever made, called A Miserable Pile of Fuck by Mr. James Nerd Esquire. Naturally, it has something of a cult following due to how bad it is, and it got a re-release in 2024, complete with bonus extras and stuff, and hey, look at that nerd. However, the re-release never made it onto Steam, despite launching on the likes of Xbox, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, and on GOG for PC, but not Steam. This was apparently due to objections to the nudity found inside the game, similar to Vile. And I really regret having to compare Plumbers to any game, and especially comparing it to Vile. But this is what Steam has done to me.
Flowers and leather? This guy's different. Interesting.
To the most beautiful woman I've ever met.
You're a charmer. Thank you. They're beautiful.
No, you're beautiful.
Both Vile and Plumbers depict real human bodies through photos and video. Even though the nudity in both titles is censored, and there's no way to uncensor it, Steam still isn't happy with them. Granted, both Vile and Plumbers Don't Wear Ties also deal with sexual themes, albeit in vastly different directions, but as I said before, it's safe to say Vile is not designed to elicit arousal. As for Plumbers, despite a more bawdy tone, that's more confusing than titillating.
Run, Jane, run!
You can actually go onto Steam's onboarding guidelines and see the exact rule that I've been taking issue with here. What you shouldn't publish on Steam: nude or sexually explicit images of real people. That's a pretty hard rule. Not just non-consensual nudity, it seems to be a zero-tolerance policy to skin, regardless of context. Pairing nudity with sexually explicit images feels underhanded in the same way it did with the judgment put on Vile, and the issue of whether nudity constitutes pornography is so ridiculous I'm not even going to entertain it, because topics more easily covered by Simpsons episodes older than I am don't need to be relitigated. I think the rule is ridiculous, and I don't blame any developer for falling afoul of it. Not just because of its unforgiving implementation that doesn't account for censorship, but because there is actual nudity to be found in games on Steam now. Mafia 2 has collectible Playboy magazines with full pinups of naked ladies. Harvester and the Phantasmagoria series, in their crunchy 90s FMV glory, feature nudity and sexual themes in edgy abundance. I was also pointed to a game called Tender Loving Care on Blue Sky that bills itself on its nudity and sexual themes, and also stars John Hurt for some reason.
How did you feel when Catherine began undressing in front of Michael? I like to watch people doing intimate things.
The 90s were a weird time. It might not be specifically hypocritical of Steam to continue to sell these whilst denying other titles. After all, these are the onboarding guidelines, and Steam has been on board with Tender Loving Care for quite a while. It does make the rules seem weird and arbitrary though, and this brings me to our next interesting title. A relatively recent game that deals with live-action nudity and sexual themes that released on Steam without really any fuss. In fact, it received critical acclaim.
Producer said, We are born naked, and if we are lucky, we die naked. So why not shoot a movie naked?
Well put.
He kept his clothes on.
Immortality, made by Sam Barlow and Half Mermaid from 2022, is an FMV game that received rave reviews and a number of awards when it came out. And not to reduce this work down to just its R-rated material, but it is practically brimming with nudity from its cast, to the point I definitely have to censor it for YouTube, and deals with explicitly sexual themes throughout. It features bare breasts, bums, uncomfortable looks at the human body, and this game is on Steam now. No need to patch in anything, it's just there, uncut and uncensored. Don't misunderstand me, I have no problem with this game, because this is how it should be. Immortality is obviously not pornography, and I don't think its nudity caused that much fuss. I looked around for any kind of controversy all its bare skin caused, but I genuinely couldn't find anything. Tabloids in the UK, who usually can't wait to make a moral panic about evil video games, reported on it as just a normal game. It caused so little a stir that, anecdotally, I didn't know Immortality had nudity until very late into making this video, when I actually sat down to play it. So what the hell is your problem, Steam? Why is this okay? Which is more explicit than Plumbers, and I'd argue more explicit than Vile even. Well, here's where things get a little more interesting. That Steam onboarding guideline I mentioned seemed pretty definitive, right? Immortality is in clear violation here. Well, I used the Wayback Machine to look at the documentation before Immortality released, August 26th, 2022. What you shouldn't publish on Steam. Sexually explicit images of real people. Huh, no mention of nudity whatsoever. So when was the rule changed? I can only go to certain dates on the Wayback Machine, but the first date where the rule changes is less than 3 weeks after Immortality came out, September 16th, 2022. This is kind of weird timing. If Immortality had tried to release a month later, would it have been blocked? The old rule was still in place on September 6th, but at some point between then and the 16th, it was changed. And seemingly quietly too. If there was a public announcement about this, I couldn't find it. I did contact Valve's press office to get any kind of clarification, but I didn't receive a reply. I also contacted Half Mermaid to ask if they ever received contact from Valve about the content of Immortality, but I didn't receive a reply from them either. So the thread ends here. This leaves us with a weird timeline and the lingering question of why make this change? From here, we can only speculate. I don't know if the Steam rules were changed because of Immortality specifically. Maybe they got into a sweat because of it, or the timing might just be a coincidence, and Valve was dealing with adult games with real nudity behind the scenes that it didn't want to be on the platform. So then we get the hard and fast no real nudity rule to squash it all, that also hits games that aren't pornography. We could also guess it was to do with payment processors. They weren't just preying on adult content in 2025, they've been going at it for a while. But when Steam changed the onboarding guidelines in 2025, prohibiting anything that violates payment processors guidelines, they banned a bunch of games that were already sitting on Steam. If the payment processors put on pressure in 2022, why did none of the other games I mentioned get banned as well? I don't have the answers for you. All I do have is the rule whose reason for being I don't see. There wasn't a controversy before it, but now it's preventing new games from releasing on Steam, despite them launching fine on other storefronts. From the outside, it seems arbitrary. Is it a personal prudishness? Isn't this what we have ratings boards for? You'd think, wouldn't you? Classification boards might be an authority on whether a game can release in a country, but Valve reserves final say to refuse. Horses and Plumbers Don't Wear Ties were given age ratings. The ESRB of America gave Plumbers Don't Wear Ties an M for mature, and PEGI in Europe gave it a 16. Not even an 18, and both of these ratings are also exactly what Immortality has. Yet, Steam bans Plumbers. Horses got an IARC certificate that gave it an M for mature and an 18 rating from PEGI. Still, this gets banned too. What is the point of a rating system if the storefront is going to completely ignore it? And as pointed out by many people amidst all this, there's apparently no harm in hosting hentai games or those Unity and Unreal 5 3D games that are all wet textures and jiggle physics. Sex with Hitler is the easy target, and it's an entire series on Steam. Valve has no problem with unrealistic depictions of the naked body, just the realistic. If this rule of no real nudity was meant to prevent the perception of Steam as an adult erotica storefront, then the rule is as arbitrary as it is ineffective. Personally, I don't have a problem with consenting adults purchasing erotica. I don't personally care that Steam hosts it. It's the fact that for everything that gets let onto the storefront, a game like Vile, which actually has something important to say about the darker sides of life and human connection, gets denied. Banning a game that wants to speak frankly about themes like sexual assault and basically labeling it as pornography is a negative on the gaming landscape and society as a whole. If such a practice were widespread across all media, across all speech and expression, then only the perpetrators of such reprehensible conduct would benefit. Let me get real for a second here. What has been the point of banging the games are art drum for decades? Defending games as free expression against bad faith actors and useless politicians, only for a game storefront run by a gaming company to suddenly start turning away titles because it personally gives them the ick. Steam has a complete stranglehold on the PC marketplace. If you want to sell PC games, with very rare exceptions, you want your game on Steam. It doesn't matter what size you are. Not being on Steam can kill your PC game sales because the competition isn't really competing. Horses did eventually release on GOG and Humble. It was meant to release on Epic too, but was pulled a day before release in even weirder circumstances that'll take too long to unpack. While they made enough money to pay off their debts, probably bolstered by the controversy, the studio Santa Ragione say they may not collaborate and make another game again, and it's entirely because of how core Steam is to revenue. Steam's economics rely heavily on multi-year long tail sales, and, for our past projects, on Steam key distribution through bundles, which has also lately been restricted for low-selling titles. These structural differences are why a strong 2-week result on smaller storefronts does not tell us what a full Steam release could have looked like. A survey from this year showed that a majority of developers see Steam as a monopoly. The debate of if it actually meets the definitions of the label is uninteresting compared to how a lot of gamers seem to see Steam as the good monopoly, if it were one. They do big sale events that simply feel unmatched in the gaming space. Their launcher, after many years of improvements, feels unobtrusive and offers additional features, social and utility tools that people are generally positive to. From the consumer perspective, Steam is a good guy. But far from doing nothing and watching their competition shoot themselves in the foot, Steam has done a monumental amount of work to grow organically into the behemoth that it is today, making sure that people rarely look elsewhere. While their competition shoots themselves in the foot, the problem with this mindset about Cool Uncle Gabe is that it anthropomorphizes Valve, an enormous opaque corporation, and discounts the sway and power that they have. When Steam ignores rating systems and bans games from sale on its store based on its own criteria, Steam is putting itself as an arbiter of not just what can and cannot be put out, but what can and cannot be made on PC. Each banning is a public declaration, an example put on display across headline after headline on what Steam says is and is not acceptable. Making art is an endeavor and expression, but also a way of earning a living, and if you are prevented from being able to sell your art in a meaningful way, you might just not bother making anything anymore. Steam's decisions might mean that less people make games. And sure, Steam is a business and has the freedom to host whatever it wants on its store. That is true. Equally true is the rights of consumers and developers to criticize Steam for doing business in ways that do not serve them. Valve has an almighty influence over the gaming landscape, and it doesn't serve anyone to pretend otherwise just because their product works better. After all, Valve as a company wants even more. Of course they want more. Private or not, Valve is a business. And so we have the new Steam hardware that would like to continue to make Steam the go-to place for gaming in new ways. If Valve wants to be in every room of our house, be every device that we play games with, then we as consumers need to be critical of the way they run their business. Or else, There will be absolutely no other place to turn to. Even outside of banning these games, the lack of clear communication and arbitrary judgments is something we should expect better of from Steam. It is not the behaviour of a good monopoly, but a tyrannical system that doesn't have anyone's best interest at heart. Whether or not games like Vile and Horses are for you, this is an issue you should care about. You don't know where else the line will be drawn, and who will no longer be found to be in Steam's good graces with no ability to fight back. As the studio behind Horses said, for every case like Horses that becomes visible, there are many more games that are quietly banned, delisted, or trapped in indefinite review for unclear reasons, with developers too worried about retaliation or future approval to speak publicly. We are grateful to the journalists and outlets who have reported, and who will continue to report, on these cases. That's one of the best things I think people can do about this, supporting these games and talking about them. Even if you only watched this video and didn't play Vile for yourself, I still ask of you to support the developer and charity by making a donation on vileisbanned.com. I have previously asked people to leave reviews of games that I think are underseen, but since that's not an option here, I ask people to instead talk about Vile, to post about it online, share it with friends who you think might be interested in it. Word of mouth is the best way to support artists when the systems fail us. And not to leave things on doom or uncertainty, it does seem that Kara Cadaver is continuing with game development, posting online a prototype that she's working on. It has similarities to the Mary game, and that's something I'd be really interested to see fleshed out. Horses can be bought on GOG and Humble, so if you want a linear narrative about a weird premise, then it's right there for you. I did play through Horses and I quite liked it. It might be blunt like a kick in the head, but it offered quite a few moments that were surprisingly thoughtful and will stick with me. So I recommend it. And if you do play it, you can leave a review to help out the developers. They say they will be at least trying to get funding for a new title from publishers, and I think it'd be a shame to lose them. And if you want, play Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. Why not? Yes, it's one of the worst games ever made, but I'm glad it got a re-release, because we should treasure gaming's history in all areas, and Plumbers is a time capsule like no other. Even if these games aren't for you, talk about them. Engage with them. Like it, don't like it, discuss why with friends and people online, because that's what you do with art. Form your own opinions on that which dares to be different and push boundaries, and ask yourself why it does or does not succeed, and maybe learn more about yourself in the process. That's the real value from seeing new works from different perspectives. The only time you wouldn't get anything at all is if you never hear from those voices. And wouldn't that be a shame? Thank you for watching this video, and thank you to everyone who gave feedback whilst I was making it. This was a lot, and I wasn't expecting it to take as long as it did, but I'm happy to be able to share it with you now. Thank you to my patrons and YouTube members for their patience and their support. I am glad I am able to do this thanks to you. Patrons get to ask questions in Q&A segments at the end of videos, which we'll get into right now. What was your favourite game you played in 2025? I said in the year that Blueprints and Deltarune were in the running, and they ended up being my favourites. So let me talk about the unexpected runner-up, Zato. I love the world and everything in it. It's a visual novel, it's completely free, and I absolutely love it to pieces. It follows a girl living in a town in the USSR that officially doesn't exist, and her friend has gone missing. It might be the case of playing the right game at the right time in my life, but this resonated with me in such a way that I completely devoured it. You can probably tell from the art that it has Serial Experiment Lane influences, but it is its own beast. The main character is a very hopeless optimist, and I wanted to see her story through to the end. Any games releasing in 2026 you're most looking forward to? In less obvious answers, a few actually got delayed into this year. I'm still waiting for Mina the Hollower. Ontos, however you pronounce it, got announced at the Game Awards, and after playing Soma last year, I am really excited to see what's going on with that. Cairn looks to be the right mix of stress and meditation that I need, and relatedly, Pathologic 3. It's already out, but I am looking forward to being able to fully dive into it now this video is done. Thank you all so much. I don't know what the next video will look like. It's like there's a bunch of bloody pressure around me. But it won't take as long to make. It's crazy times, but stay safe, stay strong, and I'll see you next time.
Interesting.